All women are different, but they are all women. This video is androcentric from a men's point of view and is presented as opinion, commentary, and debate. Expressing opinions is not violence. These are ideas to challenge, question, and argue in public, because classical liberalism relies on the First Amendment for its dialectic. If you are a feminist, then consider this. If patriarchy truly existed as claimed, feminism could not. And if all men are trash and women are equal to men, then what are we to conclude? Women will die for their children, men will die for their wives and children. And God chose to die for all mankind. Authority rolls up with responsibility. If this framing of facts offends you, click off to a cute cat video. Proceeding further will expose you to gamma bias and criticism directed at ideas, claims, institutions, not at any individual's virtue or dignity. Our method follows the 7 liberal arts: the trivium, grammar, logic, rhetoric, and the quadrivium, arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy, and the transcendentals, the good, true, and beautiful. If this framework is not for you, feel free to exit now. It's no disgrace. Women are wonderful. God bless America. Men are great. Feminismus delendis est. Deepfakes and propaganda: the rise of personalized unreality, written by Conrad Riker. Available now. Links in description. Deepfakes and propaganda: a field guide for men who still notice reality. The estrogenic simulacrum: why her little lie is a bioweapon and queer theory is a war crime against reality. The red-pilled man's guide to killing the simp and saving the West. You are living in a targeted simulation, a gynocentric funhouse mirror designed to extract your labor and your sanity while convincing you it is your patriotic duty to enjoy the haircut. We stand at the precipice of a great unmaking, where the transcendental of truth is being dissected and replaced by the deepfake of emotional safety. Do not mistake this for hyperbole. It is a rigorous observation of natural law. The modern world is not merely suffering from a few erroneous policies. It is suffering from a metaphysical virus that seeks to invert the logos, turning the straight path of masculine virtue into the queer spiral of degenerative chaos. You have been told that the small lies, the white lies, are the social glue that holds civilization together. This is the first frame of the trap. In reality, these microfabrications are the diagnostic probes of a biological predator. Tactical sonar pings designed to map the boundaries of your resolve and find the weak points in your armor, where the knife of manipulation can be slid effortlessly between the ribs. Consider the microtest, a phenomenon so devastatingly obvious, yet so universally ignored by the simping masses that it qualifies as a civilizational blind spot. When a woman looks you in the eye and lies about something trivial, say the cost of a frivolous purchase or the nature of a text message, she is not merely deceiving you, she is conducting a stress test of your reality. Etymologically, a test derives from the Latin testum, an earthen vessel used for assaying metals. She is checking to see if you are gold or if you are clay. If you accept the lie to keep the peace, you have failed the dialectic. You have proven that your adherence to the truth is negotiable, and by that very negotiation, you have ceded the sovereignty of your own mind to the feminine imperative. Syllogism is the weapon of the waking man. Major premise: truth is the non-contradictory identification of reality. Minor premise: the small lie contradicts reality. Conclusion: the man who accepts the small lie has accepted a contradiction, thereby ejecting himself from the realm of the real and entering the deep fake of the matrix. This systemic rot goes far beyond the bedroom. It is now the state-sanctioned curriculum of the West. We see it in the queering of the classroom, a perverse paideia that seeks to sever the natural teleology of the child from the biological imperatives of the species. The word queer itself means oblique or perverse, literally across from the straight path. By weaponizing empathy against the logic of natural law, the cultural Marxists have constructed a grooming ladder designed to replace the apprenticeship mastery ladder of our ancestors. They do not want stoic men capable of enduring hardship. They want dysphoric victims addicted to validation. They have replaced the trivium, the grammar, logic, and rhetoric that forged the minds of giants with a solipsistic echo chamber where lived experience trumps objective fact. This is the deepfake personalized, a reality tailored to the narcissist, where the only sin is the assertion of a boundary. We are watching the systematic demolition of the mixed constitution of the human soul, where the monarchy of reason is deposed by the mob of appetite. But the siege is not merely external, it is internal. It manifests in the weaponized sadness of the solipsistic siren, the sad mood without explanation. This is the biological precursor to the deep fake, a mimetic trap set to trigger your male provisioning instinct. She feigns distress. You rush to fix it. She reveals nothing. You are left chasing a phantom, expending vital energy to solve a problem that does not exist. This is the Hista strategy in action. By refusing to engage with this emotional blackmail, you deploy the stoic rock frame, stripping the manipulation of its power. We must reclaim the virtue of accountability, the scaffold of the masculine spirit. A man who owns his mistakes without excuses is a force of nature. A man who offers alibis is merely a leaf in the wind of feminine chaos. It is time to smash the idols of the woke Babylon and re-enshrine the truth as the only currency that matters. The machine feeds on your ignorance and your compliance. It is time to starve the beast. The gossamer lie, the epistemology of the microtest, and the siege of truth. Mendicem oporte esse memorum. The ancients warned a liar must have a good memory. Yet in the genocentric dystopia we inhabit, the modern woman requires no such cognitive burden, for the gamma bias of society acts as her external hard drive, instantly retrieving justifications for her deceits while deleting the cache of her transgressions. Consider the mundane, almost arterial nature of the coffee incident, a tactical reconnaissance mission disguised as a beverage run. You, the provider, the architect of security, find a receipt in the pocket of her jeans, 45 spent on frivolous, sugary indulgences at a boutique cafe, while she reported a mere 10 expenditure. The blue-pilled simp, brainwashed by decades of cultural Marxist reframing, would suppress the cognitive dissonance, fearing the controlling label. But the red-pilled man, armed with the dialectic, sees the reality. She did not lie to keep the peace. She lied to break your frame. The lie is not a social lubricant. It is a corrosive acid eating away the bond of Fide's trust. And her framing of your detection as paranoia is a classic Freudian projection, inverting the moral vector so that the victim of the fraud becomes the aggressor in the kangaroo court of feminine emotion. This is the biological precursor to the AI deep fake, a personalized unreality generated to manipulate your resource allocation. We stand on the precipice of a digital abyss where seeing is no longer believing, yet we ignore the analog version playing out in our bedrooms. When a woman feigns happiness to secure resources or conceals a minor financial transgression, she is engaging in the same ontological violence as a server farm synthesizing a fake video. She is altering the data stream of your relationship to elicit a response, investment, commitment, silence. It is a survival strategy rooted in our evolutionary past, what the philosopher identified as genius for dissimulation, a cunning necessary for the physically weaker sex to survive. But what was once a biological necessity for survival has metastasized into a cancer in an age where her survival is subsidized by the state and your tax dollars. To accept the small lie is to accept a Trojan horse within the walls of your own intellect, and if you permit the breach, you are not a partner. You are a cuckold of the consciousness, willingly hosting a parasitic fiction. We must deploy the trivium as our shield and sword against this siege of truth. Consider the grammar of the interaction. She spent 45. This is the datum, the irreducible fact. The logic dictates that 45 is not 10, therefore a contradiction exists. The rhetoric, the art of persuasion, is where most men fail, reacting with emotional spleen which signals weakness and validates her frame that you are unhinged. Instead, you must apply the amused mastery frame. When she attempts the gaslight, do not rage. Rage is the emotion of a slave. Instead, channel the spirit of the paterfamilias correcting a wayward child. Look her in the eye with the calm certainty of a man who knows the logos. Sweetheart, you say, not with malice, but with the devastating heavy amusement of a judge dismissing a frivolous lawsuit. If you're going to invent a reality, at least make it statistically probable. The receipt says otherwise. Try again. You strip the lie of its power by refusing to meet it with the anger it desires, instead holding it up to the light of the transcendentals, the good, the true, the beautiful, where it shrivels and dies. The etymology of test reveals the metaphysical stakes of this seemingly trivial interaction. The word comes from the Latin testum, an earthen pot used for assaying gold, and testis, a witness. A man who swallows the white lie is not acting as a testis, a witness to reality. He is reducing himself to a testum, a mere vessel for her emotional waste, a garbage bin for her dysregulation. We must look to the syllogism of the Trojan horse to understand the inescapable logic of our position. P1. If a man accepts a small lie, P, to preserve domestic harmony, he necessarily concedes that the woman's emotional comfort, E, is of higher value than objective reality, R. P2. If E greater than R, then the man has forfeited his epistemological authority and accepted the primacy of feelings over facts. P3. The red-pilled man maintains that R must always supersede E to maintain a functional hierarchy. T. Therefore, accepting the small lie is a logical contradiction that destroys the man's status as a rational agent, rendering him a subject of the feminine imperative. The assault on the truth is the siege of the modern Babylon, a Tower of Babel built, not of brick and mortar, but of feelings, critical theories, and lived experience. Feminism and cultural Marxism are the architects of this ruin, preaching that your truth supersedes the truth. This is the pathology that has decimated the family courts, where perjury is a weapon of the state, and fatherhood is criminalized on the altar of female solipsism. We see the fruit of this poison tree in the suicide rates of men, cast aside by a system that prizes the useful lie over the inconvenient truth. To reclaim our civilization, we must start by reclaiming the micro-territory of our own interactions. We must mercilessly expose the gossamer lie, that thin, fragile thread of deceit, and sever it before it binds us. The duty of the red-pilled man is not to be liked, nor to be nice, that insipid, feminized virtue of the mediocre, but to be right. By holding the line on the 35 discrepancy, you are not being petty. You are acting as a bulwark against chaos, a defender of the logos, ensuring that your reality remains your own, impervious to the seductive, lethal whispers of the deep fake. But if the interpersonal deep fake is a tactical scalpel, the institutional deep fake is a sledgehammer to the cranium of the next generation. The feminine imperative, unsatisfied with merely nagging the adult male into submission, has set its sights on the most vulnerable target, the unformed mind of the child. Having dismantled the authority of the father in the home, the cultural Marxists have marched their toxicity straight into the classroom, weaponizing the innate empathy of the young to install a malware of the spirit. This is not education, it is the paideia of perversion, a systematic severing of the apprentice from the master, to be replaced by the grooming ladder of the state. The paideia of perversion, queering the classroom and the dismantling of natural law. Give me a child until he is 7, the old maxim goes, and I will show you the man. The Jesuits understood the power of formative education, but they were rank amateurs compared to the architects of the modern state classroom. Consider the cognitive deepfake currently running on the psychological firmware of the youth, the normalization through exposure protocol. I recently flipped through a stack of modern educational supplements intended for kindergartners, and the sheer statistical impossibility of the illustrations was staggering. In a world where upwards of 98% of the population identifies as heterosexual and biological sex is a binary reality, these books depicted non-traditional family structures in nearly every other page, not as a statistical anomaly, but as the gold standard. This is not inclusion, it is a neuro-linguistic rewrite. By flooding the developing mind with repetitive stimuli that contradict the observable laws of nature, the state deploys a tactic indistinguishable from a sensory deprivation tank, severing the child's ability to recognize the straight and the normal. They are creating a personalized unreality where the nuclear family is a deviant concept, effectively gaslighting children into believing their own biological instincts are the aberration. The establishment insists that this sudden surge in gender dysphoria is organic, a genetic lottery ticket cashing in en masse. Let us apply the cold steel of logic to this born this way narrative to see if it holds water. Major premise: evolutionary psychology dictates that maladaptive behaviors which reduce reproductive success are selected out of the gene pool over time. Minor premise: gender transition and the rejection of biological pair bonding drastically reduce reproductive fitness and genetic propagation. Conclusion: therefore, the explosion of gender dysphoria is not a genetic event, but a social contagion spread by gamma bias, the pathological pursuit of victim status in a feminized moral hierarchy. We are witnessing a mimetic virus, not a biological reality. The genocentric hive mind, having conquered the academy, now rewards the renunciation of masculinity with social credit, twisting the natural developmental confusion of puberty into a lifetime subscription to pharmaceutical dependency. This entire ideology rests on a metaphysical rebellion so profound it seeks to unwrite the very fabric of the universe. Consider the following syllogism that dismantles their core dogma. Major premise: natural law dictates that biological structures serve specific teleological functions, known as the final cause, e.g., the eye is for seeing. The reproductive organs are for generation. Minor premise: queering denies the teleology of the body in favor of solipsistic hedonism, asserting that the body has no inherent purpose other than the whims of the ego. Conclusion: therefore, queer theory is a rebellion against the structure of reality itself. It is a philosophical insanity that posits the mind can dictate reality to the body, reversing the causal order of existence. They have taken the queer, originally meaning oblique, perverse, or odd, and turned it into a weapon against the straight, which in the Western canon represents the correct, direct, and masculine path of righteousness and logic. One cannot ignore the historical rhymes that echo through the halls of Weimar Germany, where the Frankfurt School's critical theory first began its decomposition of the West. There is a straight line from the decadence of that era to the modern drag queen story hour, a phenomenon that replaces the apprenticeship mastery ladder with a grooming ladder. We have dismantled the rigorous discipline of the trivium, grammar, logic, and rhetoric, and replaced it with the liturgy of feelings. This is the ultimate triumph of the feminized academy, a safe space that is actually a sensory deprivation tank for the soul, preventing the development of stoic, rational men. By removing the challenge, the friction, and the objective truth from education, we have not protected the children, we have delivered them trust and blinking to the predators of the mind who seek to sever them from their ancestors and their heritage. The remedy for this degeneracy is not a polite letter to the school board. It is a strategic ejection. We must enforce a separation of school and state, not merely as a policy preference, but as a spiritual imperative to rescue our progeny from the state-sanctioned deepfake. The red-pilled man must reclaim his role as the patriarch and the tutor, reinstating the guild and the rigorous standards of the past. We must teach our sons the Roman virtue of fortitudo, the strength to endure hardship, rather than the modern curriculum of self-loathing. A civilization that teaches its children to question their genitals rather than question their assumptions has already fallen to the barbarians of the mind. It is time to pull the ripcord, build our own institutions, and let the Babylon of woke collapse under the weight of its own logical impossibilities. We have analyzed the macroscopic deepfakes of the state, the grand lies of gender ideology, and the globalist rendering of the family, but the propagandist virus operates most effectively at the microscopic level, within the very walls of your own home. Before the state could erase the father, the feminine mystique had to neutralize the man, replacing his rational sovereignty with a desperate, simpering need for validation. This is the original deepfake, the weaponization of mood to obscure truth, a biological warfare tactic that predates the internet by millennia. The solipsistic siren, weaponized sadness, and the denial of female manipulation. Consider the silence. Picture the scene. You return home seeking the tranquility that a decent man earns through his labor, only to find her seated, staring at nothing, radiating a gloom so thick you could cut it with a knife. You ask what is wrong. She offers a flat nothing. You ask again, softer now, concern genuine. She turns away. You spend the next 3 hours dancing on eggshells, fetching tea, offering apologies for crimes you never committed, bargaining with your own dignity to buy a smile. You have just been robbed. The silent treatment is not an emotional response. It is a calculated siege weapon of the petty tyrant, a biomimetic trap designed to trigger your noble instinct to solve problems. And you fell for it like a rookie touching a hot stove for the first time. The cultural Marxist intelligentsia and their feminist handmaidens have spent decades rebranding this theatrical deceit as emotional labor or different communication styles. A lie so audacious it insults the very definition of language. Communication, by its etymological root from the Latin communicar, to make common, demands the transfer of intelligible truth via the trivium, grammar to define terms, logic to structure thought, and rhetoric to persuade. When a woman pouts without explanation, she is not communicating emotionally, she is waging war against reason. To accept incoherence as a valid dialectic is to surrender the cornerstone of Western rationality. If a builder refused to use a level and claimed he was simply spatially expressing himself, the cathedral would collapse and the villagers would stone him for incompetence. Yet, when women flood the public square with acoustic deepfakes of distress, we are commanded to nod reverently at the mystery of the feminine soul. We must shatter this civilization-wide gaslighting. The crying woman occupies the same untouchable pedestal in our gynocentric pantheon that the sacred king once did in the ancient world. And the high priests of woke theology burn any heretic who dares to peek behind the veil. The Greeks, those magnificent architects of logos, warned us of the sirens, not hideous monsters, but beautiful women whose songs promise transcendent knowledge while luring sailors onto the rocks. The siren is the perfect archetype of the hystera, the womb, from which we derive hysteria. The ancients knew that unchecked female emotion, divorced from the anchor of natural law, acts as an acoustic hallucination, a personalized unreality that short-circuits the male intellect and turns the protector into the pawn. Formal logic strips the paint off this manipulation with ruthless efficiency. Consider the histostrategy syllogism. Premise 1. If a woman feigns or exaggerates distress without providing a verifiable cause, P, she initiates a phantom crisis requiring external intervention. Premise 2. If the man responds to this phantom crisis by expending energy, attention, or resources to fix the undefined problem Q, he validates the false premise and transfers his power to the deceiver. Conclusion. Therefore, the result, our woman, gains control over man's resources and emotional baseline is achieved through fraud, QED. When you rush to comfort a woman who refuses to tell you why she is sad, you are not being a good man. You are being a useful idiot participating in your own exploitation, like a homeowner frantically paying ransom to a kidnapper who is merely holding a mirror. The genius of the without explanation tactic lies in its exploitation of the male psyche's greatest strength and weakness, the capacity for guilt and the drive to engineer solutions. By withholding the why, she transforms you into a prisoner of your own imagination. You run through your mental Rolodex of recent sins. Did I forget the anniversary? Did I look at the waitress too long? Projecting your insecurities onto her blank canvas. She becomes the mirror reflecting your own fears back at you, and you hypnotize yourself into submission. This is not intimacy. It is a psychological Molotov cocktail thrown into the living room of your sanity. You are not solving a problem. You are debugging a computer that has been intentionally infected with a virus by its manufacturer. From the perspective of evolutionary psychology, a field the left hates because it dares to anchor humanity in biological reality rather than social construction. This behavior is a resource extraction racket refined over millennia. The sad mood shit test is a biomimetic trap. Just as the anglerfish dangles a glowing lure in the dark depths to attract prey, the solipsistic siren dangles a sad mood to trigger the male fix-it instinct. You paddle over, convinced you are being a hero, and snap, you are on the hook. You create a debt of attention that she collects in the currency of compromised boundaries and unearned compliance. In the brutal calculus of nature, a man who expends energy solving phantom problems is a man too exhausted to guard the perimeter against real threats. He is effectively castrated by his own altruism. The cure, anchored in the Stoic ideal of apatheia, liberation from passion via rational separation, requires ceasing to feed the monster. You must stand as the stoic rock against which her tides of theatrical gloom crash uselessly. When she manifests the fabricated illusion of baseless sorrow, do not pursue, inquire, or soothe. Merely declare, possessing the steady resolve of a magistrate rejecting a trivial claim, I see you are disturbed. I will be elsewhere reading. Once you are prepared to converse maturely using reason, I am willing to talk. Deny the self-absorbed siren the attention she demands, and observe how rapidly the tears vanish when the spectators exit the stage. Reclaim your frame, restore the truth, and allow the transcendental radiance of the logos to scorch the shadows from the wall. We have effectively starved the hystera of its manipulative sustenance, utilizing the Stoic rock to dismantle the acoustic deepfakes of the feminine imperative. Yet, a purely defensive posture is insufficient to restore the mixed constitution of the soul. A man cannot merely reject the external lies of the genocentric order while nurturing the internal forgeries of his own vanity. To truly embody the logos is to subject oneself to the rigorous due process of the trivium, where the evidence of one's failure must be admitted without the cowardly framing of the gamma male. The transition from the passive shielding of dignity to the active wielding of truth exposes a man to the harsh verdict of existence, and it is in that crucible that the wheat is finally separated from the chaff. The virtue of the scaffold, accountability, the fall, and the restoration of the masculine spirit. Adversity reveals genius, prosperity conceals it. The Roman poet Horace understood, but in our age of curated digital deepfake reality, adversity merely reveals which men are capable of owning the wreckage of their own choices. I once watched a purely modern, blue-pilled disaster unfold in a parking lot fender bender, a trivial collision that stripped the veneer of civilization off a 30-year-old male. The sun was in his eyes. The other driver had braked too suddenly. The car's braking distance was misrepresented in the manual. The asphalt was slightly damp. He was a cascading waterfall of externalities, a victim of a universe conspiring against his Volvo. Contrast this with the red-pilled man who bumps the car ahead, steps out, and says, I was looking at my phone, my fault, let's exchange insurance. The relief in the other driver's eyes was palpable, not because they were getting paid, but because they were in the presence of logos, the rational ordering principle of the masculine spirit. By admitting the specific causal link to the negative outcome, the red-pilled man does not lower his status. He elevates it, proving he is an agent of free will and not a passive object of fate, while the excuse-maker involuntarily declares himself a eunuch of circumstance. This distinction is not merely cosmetic, it is the foundational syllogism of masculinity. Major premise: accountability is the admission of one's specific causal link to a negative outcome. Minor premise: excuses sever that causal link in a futile attempt to protect the ego. Conclusion: therefore, a man who offers excuses is logically declaring himself an object, not an agent, and is functionally indistinguishable from a whining child or worse. The modern feminist who blames the patriarchy for her own poor choices. This is the evasio, the satanic recoil from reality that poisons the soul. When you offer an excuse, you are practicing the feminine art of feeling your way out of consequences, rather than thinking your way through them. You are creating a personality-based deep fake, a hallucinated self that is never wrong, and like all deep fakes, it requires immense energy to maintain while the physical reality of your incompetence rots the structure beneath. Consider the ancient concept of the mixed constitution, that golden mean of political theory championed by Polybius and Cicero, which balances the monarchic, the aristocratic, and the democratic elements to prevent tyranny. The mind of a man operates on the same principles. Your reason is the monarch, your spirit, or thymos, is the aristocracy, and your appetites are the democracy. When a man makes excuses, He is staging a populist coup within his own skull. He allows the democratic mob of his base desires and fears to overrun the monarchic rule of logic. He becomes a failed state of one. This internal anarchy mirrors the external political decay we see in the West, where the victimhood culture of the left has replaced the rigorous climb up the apprenticeship mastery ladder with the easy slide into grievance politics. Just as the leftist blames systemic oppression for his inability to master a trade, the blue-pilled man blames traffic for his lack of attention. Both reject the trivium. They reject the grammar of the situation in favor of the rhetoric of victimization, proving themselves unfit for the responsibilities of liberty. To combat this, you must weaponize the truth against the conspiracy of lies through a policy of radical confession. This is not the self-flagellation of a medieval monk, but a tactical nuclear strike against the gynocentric order that relies on your shame to control you. The Matrix, this gynocentric superstructure of divorce courts, Me Too lynch mobs, and HR departments, feeds on secrets and the fear of exposure. Consider the epidemic of false accusations or the staggering suicide rate of men assets stripped by family courts. These systems function only because men are terrified of being seen as the bad guy. By owning your flaws, your lusts, your anger, and your errors before they can be used against you, you disarm the parasite. You step off the scaffold of their expectations and onto the solid ground of your own nature. If you admit you are a flawed man seeking excellence, the feminist shriek of toxic masculinity dissolves as it has no target. You cannot blackmail a man who has already published his own ledger. Ultimately, the resurrection of Western civilization depends on men rejecting the deep fakes of their own ego and submitting to the audit of the soul. Due process is not just a legal procedure. It is a transcendental virtue that applies first to the internal court of the mind. A man who lies to himself about his mistakes creates a false reality, a caricature of competence that will inevitably collapse under the weight of natural law. The cohortry rates, the crushing debt, the loneliness epidemic, these are the wages of men who refuse to see the world as it is, preferring the comforting lies of the blue pill. There is no virtue in the fall, but there is immense virtue in the scaffold of accountability you build to climb out of it. Stand naked in the truth of your fallibility, and you will find that you have armor-plated in the very stuff of the good, the true, and the beautiful. You stand now at the exit of the Plato's cave of modern relationships, blinking in the harsh, blinding sunlight of truth, no longer shackled by the shadow puppets of female sentimentality or Marxist gaslighting. You have shed the skin of the nice guy, that most pathetic of creatures who believes that obedience to the feminine imperative will grant him entry to the gates of paradise, and have instead armed yourself with the shield of apatheia and the sword of logos. You realize now that the personalized unreality of the deepfake is not merely a technological terror on the horizon, but the very operating system of the gynocentric matrix you have been plugged into since birth. By rejecting the small lie, you dismantle the entire architecture of manipulation. By calling out the queering of reality, you defend the sanctity of natural law. And by holding your own mistakes up to the light without flinching, you become the sovereign of your own soul. This is the great work, the magnum opus of the masculine spirit, to take the raw chaos of the universe and the deceit of the feminine, and through the alchemy of reason transmute it into the gold of unshakable frame. Do not mistake this knowledge for a burden. It is the ultimate liberation, a reprieve from the drudgery of catering to the sad moods and solipsistic dramas of inferiors who view your empathy as a vulnerability to be exploited. You are no longer a utilities provider for a hysterical emotional economy, but a captain of your own destiny, navigating by the fixed stars of the transcendentals, goodness, truth, and beauty, rather than the shifting swamp lights of equity and inclusion. You have seen the wires behind the stage, the levers of the micro-tests, and the pathetic machinery of the victimhood hierarchy. Now you must go forth and live it, treating the tantrums of the modern world with the same amused disdain a Roman senator might show towards a noisy street urchin, secure in the knowledge that while the world burns in a conflagration of its own making, you have built your fortress on the bedrock of virtue. Go forth, spread this gospel of the real, and never again bow to the idol of the deep fake. And now the sponsored book introduction, Deepfakes and Propaganda, The Rise of Personalized Unreality. You're holding this book because you know something's wrong. The world feels off like a bad script written by algorithms and activists. Let me tell you how I got here. 10 years ago, a deepfake video of me confessing to crimes I never committed nearly destroyed my career. Lawyers, journalists, even friends treated me like a villain before the forgery was exposed. That was my red pill moment. I realized truth itself was under siege, and men like us were the primary targets. This isn't speculation, it's a war. Modern manhood is caught in a crossfire between AI-generated lies and real-world systems designed to break you. Think about it. Your voice can be cloned to ruin your marriage. Algorithms flood social media with propaganda claiming masculinity is a disease. Courts strip fathers of their kids while AI porn replaces real intimacy. None of this is accidental. It's a coordinated attack on your autonomy, your legacy, your right to exist as something more than a taxpayer and sperm donor. This book is for men who refuse to kneel. If you're content watching your sons get medicated into submission, your earnings seized by gold-digging exes, or your identity erased by woke bots, stop reading now. Go binge Netflix. This isn't for you, but if you're ready to fight, to expose how family courts exploit men, how universities brainwash society into hating male ambition, and how AI clones are hijacking democracy, keep going. I've spent years dissecting data they don't want you to see. Did you know 73% of male suicides trace directly to family court trauma? That sperm counts have plummeted 62% since 1980, thanks to soy and microplastics, that AI. Generated immigrants could outvote you by 2028. This isn't fear-mongering. It's a roadmap to survival. You'll learn how to weaponize blockchain to prove your innocence against deepfakes, negotiate prenups that actually work, and rebuild communities where men lead instead of apologize. We'll dissect the toxic masculinity trap, where women demand providers but punish protectors, and expose why Gen Z can't tell real news from AI fiction. This isn't a self-help book, it's a counterattack. The system wants you numb, isolated, and begging for scraps. I'm giving you the tools to break its grip. Your choice is simple: die a beta or live as a man. Deep Fakes and Propaganda, The Rise of Personalized Unreality, written by Conrad Reicher. Buy now, links in description.